What's Up with Ann, bringing you issues, stories, and personalities from our Morongo Basin community. Now, here's ANN MISTAl.
Welcome to the show. I'm glad to see we have such a wonderful audience out there today, and we have a great show today. We have the Honorable Judge Swift, and we have Chuck and Barbara Miller from a Dixieland band. So let's get started and let's see what's up with Honorable Judge Bert Swift.
Good morning, Ann. I appreciate you asking me here to talk a little bit about jury duty. I understand you have some questions.
Yeah, you know, there's a myth going around, okay, that first thing, let's talk a little about the jury duty. How important is jury duty? What is a person's responsibility for showing up? And talk a little bit about your view on the importance of jury duty.
Well, to give you an indication of how important jury duty was to our founding fathers, the Seventh Amendment, which was one of the first 10, was the only amendment that was passed unanimously. That means as far as the other 10 amendments, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third, Fourth, they were all had some arguments in there. But as far as the Seventh Amendment, that was unanimous, and that was the one for jury duty. That includes the right to free speech, the right to search and seizure. The most important one the forefathers felt was the right to a jury trial. So that's what the forefathers think. And Thomas Jefferson basically said, and I align with him very much, that he felt the right and the obligation to a jury duty was more important than voting. So the forefathers had a very strong feeling about the right to a jury trial.
To be on jury duty, what are the qualifications? Is there qualifications?
Basically, you have to be a citizen of the United States. You cannot be a felon. You have to be mentally competent, and that's general. And you have to have the ability to read and write and understand what's going on with the case.
I have a question. I have people come up to me, and and I know a few, probably there's a couple in the audience, who have said, well, I don't want to serve on jury, you know, it takes up their time, and they say they're going to go in there, and they're going to say, well, I don't like felons, to get themselves thrown off, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
What do you do in a case like that when you know they're purposely doing that?
There's not much that we can do. We know when they're doing it. We know what they're doing. We know that they're in some way attempting to poison the jury. Generally what happens, we try to get them off and out of there as soon as possible. Sometimes it's very subtle. We don't know that they're doing that, but yes, people do that. As far as I'm concerned, they're not serving this country. They're not serving their obligation to their fellow man for whatever reason, and we understand that jury duty can be very difficult. It can be time consuming. It can be hardship as far as your income and as far as your family, but it's so important that you have 12 people looking at your case if you're on one side of the coin, and the people's case, that you have to serve as a juror, no matter whether it's a hardship or not. And that's the way basically the law states it, is it has to be an extreme hardship before you're allowed to get off.
See, now I agree with you. That's why I wanted you on the show. I get the cards that they want me to report for jury duty. I call. It's been I don't know how many years, and I have not yet gone, and I really want to serve. I think it's important that everybody out there does their part and serve. If you don't show up, and you get one of those letters that everybody doesn't like, if you don't, what's the penalty?
You can spend 5 days in jail or get fined up to $1,000. And actually what it would be contempt of court, because what would happen is that we'd send out the letter. If you don't respond to the letter, then we send out the sheriff to serve you with a date to come into court. If you don't come into court at that point in time, then they will issue a bench warrant for your arrest. On the other hand, if you come into court and you explain why you weren't there, then generally the judge will admonish you and say, okay, but you understand you can't do it this way. If you come in and just say, well, I decided I didn't want to come that day, I didn't feel good, the judge will probably fine you. If it depends, every judge and every courtroom is different, so you don't know whether you're going to get a fine or whether you're going to go to jail. It just depends upon what was going on.
Now, you personally, this is a big thing with you, isn't it? This is a very important thing with you because I've heard you talk about it. I've read about you in the newspaper. You talked about it. So this is a real big issue with you, isn't it?
It's a very big issue because people don't really understand unless they're on the wrong side of the law or they are a plaintiff or a defendant in a civil case. They don't really understand how important it is to have an impartial jury, a person who's not politically appointed, a person who's not politically elected. And you have 12 people looking at that case with 12 different eyes, 12 different backgrounds. That's much more important than having a judge look at that case and say, okay, well, from my perspective, you're guilty or you're not guilty, or you're liable or you're not liable. When you have 12 people looking at it, someone's going to hear or see or catch something that the others didn't. And when the jury goes out and makes its deliberation, those things came up. Now, when you have a case that's involved with just the legal issue, it's better to have the judge, because then the judge is going to look at the law and say, okay, this is a legal issue, this is not a factual issue, and the judge is going to know what the law is. But when you have factual issues, you really want 12 people looking at that if you can.
What about if the 12 people don't get along? How do you handle that? Yeah, I'm sure you get 12 people together, especially if it's a long case. And did that ever come up?
Very, very seldom does that come up, and usually it'll only come up when one juror will make a statement that they've been admonished not to do, such as, well, in my experience, this is what happens. And then usually the jury foreperson will make that on the record, come back into the court and say, this juror is explaining to us something that we know that we're not allowed to hear, or this juror basically says, I'm not going to deliberate and I'm going to find them guilty or not guilty no matter what you say. In that case, they're brought back out. If the judge finds that's sufficient, they'll remove that juror and replace them with an alternate.
Now let's let the audience and the people out there and who are watching me on TV, how do they pick a juror? Where do they come from? Now, we were always under the impression if you registered to vote, you came from there. I have learned that if you got a driver's license, you can get picked from there. Do they do both, or explain that, how they are picked?
They do both, and that brings up an important thing. My executive assistant used to be called secretaries. Mm-hmm. Jessica said one of the things that she wanted me to talk to you about out here so that people could understand it is that you're selected from your driver's license and your voter's registration. Now, if your driver's license and your voter's registration is different in any way, the computer won't pick that up. So I'll give you an example. If I register as Bert L. Swift, but on my driver's license I have Bert Lee Swift, that computer is going to see two different people. So when it cycles through there, it's going to see Bert L. Swift and send out a summons. And then the next time it goes through there, it's going to see Bert Lee Swift. That's not my middle name, but I'm using that. Mm-hmm. It's going to see that, and it'll kick out another summons. So we tell them, if you are to check your voter's registration and to check your driver's license and make sure they are identical. Because if you don't, you're going to get two summons, or your potential is to get two summons within that year as opposed to one.
And you don't have to show up twice a year, though, isn't it? If you show up for one?
If you show up, if you've served as a juror, and serving means once you've been in panel as a juror, one time, then you're free for the year.
Okay, but then you served in a year. If you get the little letter and you get where it says you're not used, or they don't need, your number's not used in this jury, and they say they can call you back in 6 months. Is that how that works?
Yes, they can call you back, and they'll keep calling you back until you actually serve. Now, sometimes that's a benefit, sometimes it isn't, because if you get called back in 90 days or 6 months or whatever it happens to be, you're just waiting for something to happen. So if you serve and get that out of the way, then you're not going to be called for another year. But of course, you're not talking about however many registered voters and driver's license people we have here.
Okay, if you get called, are you going to always be called over here in the Joshua Tree area, or can you be called to somewhere outside the area?
Generally, you're only going to be called in what they call the jury venire, the area. You can, however, under certain circumstances, be called out of the area. For instance, we may only have, say we have 10,000 legitimate voters in our area. If we use those 10,000 up before the year is over, and we don't have any more registered voters, and we don't have anyone else that's competent, they can pull from another area to bring them in. It's never happened, but we've come close to it. We've come close to using up our entire jury panel in a year.
Okay, this is something everybody kind of wants to know too. It used to be, I think, $5 or something a day when you serve. What do you get paid for now? What are the, if somebody wants to serve, and you do it because you want to do it, because it's the right thing to do.
It's not enough.
But you still get paid.
Yes.
How much do you get paid?
$15 a day in mileage, one way. So you're better serving off with in a federal panel if you can in Los Angeles. I think they're at $50 a day in mileage. But
wow.
That's always what I say to them when they come into the jury. Say, you know, you're getting paid an awful lot for being here today. So I hope you can use it wisely. But no, you're not paid well enough. But that's a problem of economics. There's not a judge in the world that wouldn't tell you we'd like to pay jurors X amount of dollars to make sure that they're absolutely covered for their loss of income, but there just isn't enough money in the budgets to do that.
Yeah, that's, and now in a case like, everybody knows I used to have a gun shop, which I'm pretty well out of now. Nobody could register a gun. Now, would I still have to show up because nobody could, if you're in an occupation, you're the only one that can handle your business. Would you have to close your business down to show up?
Yes. Now, you can ask for an extension. All you have to do is call the judge's secretary and say, look, this is the circumstances I'm under at this point in time. I will be free, say, in September. Could you give me a date in September? Put me on the panel for September, and they will do that. They will extend the time out for you when you're under certain circumstances. But if you receive the summons, you need to be in court. Then you can explain to the judge why you believe that you shouldn't have to serve. Now, there's certain things, extreme hardship. You've already got pre-paid plans for a vacation that's already been paid for. You're going into the hospital, or someone in your family's going into the hospital, a husband or a daughter or son. There are certain things that the judge will just automatically excuse for, but those are set by statute. Then the rest of it's up to the judge, the individual judge saying, okay, I will or will not excuse you. It also depends on the nature of the crime charged. If you're talking about a charge of possession of less than an ounce of marijuana, you can probably get a juror within 20 people. But if you're talking about someone that is charged with, let's say, 5 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct against a child, you may have to go through 2 panels to get the juror, to get the number of people that will say, yes, I can be impartial in this case. And that's the important thing in a jury panel, is that you have 12 people who will look at the evidence impartially without any type of bias or leaning one way or the other. And that's not easy to get people to do, because we all come to a jury panel with our own life experiences, and those life experiences have had an emotional impact on us. And some of those experiences are so impactful that it's just going to be impossible for you, no matter how honest you are and how truthful you are, to be able to be a juror in that particular case.
Well, Your Honorable Judge Swift, I think you've been very informative. I think we said a lot of things straight where people didn't know on how they got picked. I want to thank you very much for taking the time for coming on my show. And I would like to give you one of my t-shirts here on the back.
Well,
and I know you won't wear it in the courtroom, but I expect to see it on the golf course.
I definitely will. Thank you very much, Ann, and thank you for asking me here today.
Thank you very much.
I've really enjoyed it.
Welcome back to What's Up with Ann. Thank you. And let's see what's up with Chuck and Barbara Miller from the Dixieland Band. Hi, Chuck and Barbara.
Hello.
Let me ask you, okay, how long have you two been married?
About 27 years.
Have you been playing together all that time?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you sing, and you're the leader?
Correct.
And you play?
Saxophone, little trombone, and keyboard mostly.
Okay, you have children together?
No.
No.
Okay, and so you have no one in the family that plays, you're just you two, right? And
Well,
you travel
my family
around?
all plays, but they're not from us.
Okay, and you travel around all over? Tell me some of the places where you played and who you played with and some of the things you did. Now, you were in the military years ago, and you were
Right.
a pilot, right?
Yeah, I flew the small L-19 Bird Dog aircraft, just a small, very small plane for observation, that's all.
So, and then you guys got together, when did you start the band?
I'd say probably the band that we're with, pretty much, we began about, 1980, wasn't it? Something like that. Band
In the
we're with
early
that we've really
80s.
concentrated with over the years.
Okay, now tell me some of the places you played, with who, some of the guests you've met, and tell me a little bit about the history of what you guys have done together.
Oh, we played in Laughlin, and we stick pretty much in California, but we have gone to Laughlin, and Northern California, Southern California, just Disneyland.
You played in Disneyland, huh?
Arizona.
When did
yeah.
you play in Disneyland?
I was there in the 60s and 70s.
I think I remember seeing you, the red striped guys playing Dixieland.
Right. Correct.
That was really, you guys were there a long time, were you not?
Yeah, I've got a lot of memories there, and your husband was there too.
That
Not as
I
a musician,
know.
but he was there.
Yeah, just asking about Small World.
And I sang with Les Elgart's band when they had the big bands. That was about in the early 80s.
Okay, let me ask you, you play just Dixie or do you play variety?
No, we're
what
diverse.
What kind of music do you play?
Well, we do Dixieland, of course, a big band, military. We can do military shows in military uniforms. We're slated this year to be back at the General Patton Museum on Veterans Day. And then we also have the capability of doing German Oktoberfest music, which is kind of a specialized thing. We wear the lederhosens for that sort of thing. But we try to be diverse as well as just playing Dixieland.
Have you ever headlined it, or have you ever been, have you ever met some really interesting people in your business?
We met a lot of interesting people at Disneyland. We met Les Elgart and Harry James when they had the big bands. They were all there.
And Louis Armstrong, I met him. I thought he was one of the greatest. I mean, really, as a musician. And Bob Crosby. That was another one that I admired very much. Bob Crosby and the Bobcats.
Well, I wanted to hear what they played like, so I went out to, I believe it was Sabobata. You played
Saboba
there quite
Casino,
often. Yeah, we
correct.
went there to.
In
you
San
guys were really
Jacinto.
good. I walked in the front door and you were right there. You guys were really good. I was really impressed.
And we have Eddie Freeman, who is a local here. He's in the band now, and he does very well with us. Jimmy Ogden, who has also worked at Disneyland. Randy Anglin, bass and tuba, who's worked at Disneyland. We've always found that using top flight musicians, I mean top people that are very businesslike and as well very talented, always pays off. But of course, I'm a little partial with my wife as far as a big band singer. I'm a little partial. I think she's just about tops as far as big band.
Yeah, I'd love to listen to you sing. I really do. I think it's just wonderful. They have a CD out, the Chuck Miller Band. That's which I've listened to, which is great. Do you guys have a website if somebody wanted to order one?
No,
of
we
these?
don't have a website as yet. We used to have one. We're probably going to put another one up soon.
So if somebody wants one or order one, they can contact me and
Absolutely.
through you at my web,
Absolutely.
which is
Absolutely.
What's Up with Ann,
Absolutely.
www.whatsupwithann.com. Or they can write me at ann@whatsupwithann.com, and you can order one of these. And we're going to be, I think, having a video of you guys,
Yes,
which
there's
we'll be
a-
showing on our program of you actually performing. Do you have any future shows coming up that if anybody wants to come see you, do you have any plans?
Well, we'll be at the, like I said, the General Patton Museum. And as far as the casinos go, they usually contact me by email. We never know. We might get something come up tomorrow or the next day or the day after. And then there'll be 3 or 4 jobs just loom right in all at once. Yeah. I did want to mention one other thing though, Ann. Years ago, I was very fortunate to get in early on the television sort of things. Way back in the 50s and early 60s, there used to be a TV show called Beat the Odds with Dennis James. Some of you may remember it. It was on Channel 5. At that time, Gene Autry owned Golden West Broadcasters.
I do
These are
remember
the
that.
little, these are actually the little cufflinks I got from that show, the Sammy the Whammy cufflinks. And that was a little thing that Sammy the Whammy would loom up when someone would get the wrong word or something like that. And Dennis James was great to work with. And then after that, I met a fellow when I was working at a club in Long Beach by the name of Carl Noyes. And he was very good friends of Roy Cabot, who was the producer of Chuckle the Clown series in those days. And he said,
I
well,
remember Chucko.
he said, I'm going to bring him in and have him talk to you. He's looking for another organist for the show and a drummer. So I thought, well, yeah, the sun's going to come up tomorrow too. But sure enough, about a week later, he brought him in. And Roy Cabot also at that time was the manager of the zoo out there at Thousand Oaks, I think it was. They called it Jungle Land at that time. Roy was a great producer, great guy to work with, Roy Cabot, and I was on that show for several years. 7 o'clock in the morning, that was before videotape. So if there was a blooper or a problem on the show, well, it just had to happen. One of those kind of things. So those early days of television were really fun. And Chucko, he was from Lakewood, California. He was a great guy. And I remember also meeting people like Hobo Kelly. And what was the other one that was very popular? Sheriff John.
That's going back.
That's going back a few. Those were the early days of television.
But I won't tell you my age, but I do remember them.
But that was a fun experience, kind of a precursor leading up to, you know, kind of what came on after that. And of course, meeting Barbara here was one of the best things that ever happened. And she's...
Barbara, let me ask you something, okay? How do you like traveling around and singing? And
I love it.
you have another job too. You work somewhere here in Yucca Valley.
Yeah,
do
I'm
you
a
not?
psych tech. I work at Morongo Basin Counseling and Recovery Center part-time.
Part-time. So, but how you were? Let's put it this way. How would you describe your functions as far as with the band? What do you, other than singing? What do you do anything else with the band?
Well, actually, I'm probably responsible for the program a lot. Different venues, we have to have like sets, you know, still stand there and say, what do we play now? So I usually lay out the programs and make sure the keys are all down. And just in general, keep everybody happy. And
Fantastic.
we have wonderful musicians we work with, and it's just never boring. It's always really fulfilling to sing with people like that.
Who is in your band?
We have Eddie Freeman, we have Jim Ogden, Randy England. We have 3 drummers that we pick from. Our favorite one is
Ted
Plummer.
Mm-hmm.
And if any of them can't come, then we bring in substitutions, but that's the basic core
The
band.
base band.
Yeah.
I could add something else to that, Ann, regarding Barbara. She has an innate sense of being able to look out over a crowd. If we're, for instance, if we're playing a wedding or a special function or a political function, and we've played big functions in Anaheim, like for the Electrical Contractors Association, where they had, what, 4,000 or 5,000 people there. Well, she's able to look out in the audience and pretty well tell what we should be playing next. A fast song, slow song, Latin. She seems to have that innate sense of connecting with the people.
Good girl. You've played in the park here, where they have that Saturday. You've
We've
played
been
there
several years there.
several years there. So you
So we
played
played
there.
a lot of years there.
We had a big band in there. How many? We had like 9 guys or something.
Yeah, we had a large band in there, and Ted Herman big band used to be up here. It was fun when they had the big bands up here. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys for coming. You guys are great guests, and we're going to be seeing some video of you.
Okay.
So we'll be seeing that here very shortly. So thank you very much for being our wonderful guest.
You're welcome, and we're glad we're What's Up with Ann.
Love you.
It's the best of love you ever had.